Okay, so I would like to introduce Andrew Song, who is going to share this session. So Andrew, well, introducing Andrew in this case is just to say that Andrew has been working on small-scale fisheries and governance and coastal fisheries in many countries around the world.
インタープリターにしたい。こ
Leader
れはここでや
in
ったら
governance research
これできない。
for many years now, so it's really
でポストが今だからこの人になっちゃってるから変えられてないんですよ。私も共同ポスト。だからポストを設置してもらわなきゃいけない。彼にポストを設置してもらわないといけない。
Okay, hi. Yes, I'll get started. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the governance plenary session. As Ratana mentioned, my name is Andrew Song, and I'm based at the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia, and I will be chairing the session today. So we have the privilege of having 2 hours with 5 invited plenary speakers. We have Kate Barclay, Suvaluck Satumanatpan, Gregory, Rayhan Dudayev, and Prasant Mohanty. I will do the proper introductions a little bit later, right before their talks. So the theme of this session is adjusting the governance lens in moving forward. And as you may know well, we are living in a very turbulent times, which is not only affecting the fisheries sector, but these disturbances are coming from at the national level as well as from the global sources. And unfortunately, there are significant health, livelihoods, political and military, and even supply chain issues that can affect small-scale fisheries. So it is crucial to understand their governance implications for small-scale fisheries and think about how we can adjust and improve the management of small-scale fisheries so that we're better able to navigate these rather disruptive times. The format of this session will be we'll have 5 talks in a row, and then we'll have time at the end for questions and discussions where any attendees or even the panelists can ask to any of the plenary speakers. So we'll do that. We won't have question and answer after each presentations. We thank Rutaro Kamiyama and Tustom Miyata from the local organizing committee for providing interpretation service from English to Japanese. And also we appreciate the Congress support staff for facilitating the sessions. So yeah, without further wait, I will introduce our first plenary speaker, Kate Barclay. She is Professor of International Studies and Global Studies at UTS. Since the late 1990s, Kate has researched the sustainable development of tuna resources in the island Pacific in the context of changing governance systems and globalization. Recent projects include developing social and economic monitoring frameworks for fisheries, evaluating the social and economic contributions of fisheries and aquaculture, and also fisheries governance analysis. Kate has been commissioned to do research for various international organizations such as WWF, Greenpeace, the UNDP, the European Parliament, the Pacific Islands Forum Fisheries Agency, and the World Bank. So we will have Kate start her talk, and I'll let the support staff to upload her presentation. Over to you, Kate.
to be making sure that marginalised groups, less powerful and less wealthy groups, are not prevented from seeking their livelihoods or from seeking decent work that's safe and has a living wage through unnational fisheries. So while the focus is broadly broader society, you might say that the most important thing is to make sure that the vulnerable groups in society are not being damaged by the way we go fisheries. Now, the second main assumption I've worked with today is that benefits to society from fisheries come from the whole value chain, not just the fishing mode. The benefits of realised throughout the value chains. So to understand benefits from fisheries, we need to look at pre-fishing activities, fishing, processing, trading,
プレゼンテーションが見えないってなってるけどなんだ。
That whole value chains makes it easier to see the role of women and families and the interaction of paid and unpaid work, productive and reproductive work. And from the perspective of whole value chains, the entanglement of small scale and large scale fishing becomes clearer in the cases that we have. Next slide.
Net on the screen.
In the Zoom, we are not seeing the screen. I can keep talking, but then you can see the screen. But I'm saying most of what's on the screen. I'd like to say at this point that we're talking about the very much a team effort and it's still focused on several projects. The main project informing council is one conducted from 2017 to 2019 called Assessing the Governance of Tuna Fisheries for Community Wellbeing. And that was conducted in Indonesia and Southern Islands. My Gregory is here today and some other colleagues who are listed on the slide. There's too many names for me to. In addition to that project, that's the most important project, but there's some other projects that also inform the work. Some of which can't get published as they're ongoing projects. Mike and Mick McLean, my colleague, who's able to do this in the village now at the moment, have been working with Dr. Umi Muawana, who's a fisheries economist with the Indonesian Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. And with Umi and some other people on two projects,
今普通に私ズームに参加してるだけなんだけど、ミュートは関係ない。画面が映ってないんで、さんざん喋ってるの聞こえてるから。
We've also been doing work with the Pacific Island Foreign Fisheries Agency to develop also a monitoring framework for social and economic aspects of industries in the Pacific.
No idea why this is not.
We completed a general framework for this last year, and
This is the one, the venue, you know, this here, so this is the one that's sharing the screen.
Finally, my cultivator also been influenced by some work I did with Merrill Williams, Hornby, and Victoria City.
But the screen doesn't show up on Zoom.
Called Tuna is Women's Business to Efficient Issues. It's open access.
Okay,
Next slide.
but it should not look like this.
Since the tuna species people fish for include highly migratory species, the arrangement is coordinated with regional fisheries management organisations. And the region I'm talking about today is called the Western and Central Pacific Ocean, which includes Indonesia and the Suvaluck countries. Tuna is, we can see on that, those who see that, Indonesia is sort of to the northwest of Australia, and Solomon Islands is to the northeast of Australia, so they're quite close to each other. And tuna industries in Indonesia, in the Western Central Pacific, are big. They're really important, and in fact, this region is the biggest tuna fishing region in the world. More than half of the world's tuna catch, around 3 million tons in 2019, came from this region of the Western Central Pacific. It's multi-species with big 4 tuna species and albacore that divide and everything, but there are many other kinds of mutant tunas also being caught in the region. Multi-year, first time online, online, hand line and small scale fisheries as well. And there are small, medium and large scale fisheries in most of the coastal countries. From 1% up to percent vessels with dozens of crew. The fisheries
But the sound,
all scales.
they don't hear.
These are both export and domestic consumption, and they process in the ground. So tuna can be raw, also and for lunch. Frozen, canned, smoked, fried, made into sausages and all sorts.
It's a technical consultation discussion. Anyone?
Next slide. Really hard in the room to see the whole graphic, but I think you can see most of it. So this is a value chain example from the port of Beeton in Indonesia. Indonesia is a huge country, and there are tuna ports all over the whole country. So to try and do a national graphic would be far too complex. And indeed, our project will cover all the ports, to cover 2 ports. So this graphic is representative of Beeton, but fisheries might operate differently with other ports. And the value chain is quite complex, and this value chain includes large scale and small scale fisheries. It's actually a bit more of a network than a single chain. The blue shapes are fishing, the green are ecosystems, the yellow shapes are trading and processing for export, with the purple shapes being for trading and processing for domestic markets, and the orange shapes are consumption. One thing to note about the actors in this chain is that there are small, medium, and larger players at all nodes of the chain. So it's not just small scale fisheries, there are smaller, large scale traders, smaller, large scale processors as well. The value chain we have here includes small scale person, baby person, sometimes it's called, and small scale bottom line and hand line fisheries, as well as medium to large, sort of 30 to 100 GT size per seine and bottom line vessels. There are the fishing boats, some of them, the ones on the left of the screen, the fishing boats are in integrated businesses with the processors and traders, and then there are other independent fishing boats who are not integrated with processors. But as you can see, actually, even the integrated ones still sell their tuna in more collections. And that some of the large scale traders also, they don't only do export, they also sell to local markets. And you can see those purple smaller scale traders, many of whom are women in Indonesia or in Beeton, traders are called tigo. And they mainly service local markets, and especially they perform an important function of selling tuna into wet markets in neighbourhoods around Beeton. But they also, if they get fish of the right way, will sell into chains that eventually end up in export. So it's sometimes a grade of the fish, whether a fish is export grade and it's going to get a high enough price while they're exporting. That's one of the decisions. One of the factors in making decisions about whether to send a fish overseas or not. also in domestic markets, but it's also to do with market access. Some of the traders just don't have the connections to overseas buyers, or they're not able to meet the reporting and traceability requirements that some of the imported buyers, overseas buyers require. So it's a combination of market access factors and quality and being the right species factors that influence that decision for whether to export or not. For the purpose of this table, an important thing to note is that small-scale and large-scale fishing and value chain activities are interchangeable. They're not neatly separated in any way. It doesn't make sense to try and conceptualize the small-scale activities as separate from the large-scale ones. They're both integral parts of the social ecological system, tuna system as it exists in the region. Both make use of landing facilities, fuel and other provisions, and transport logistics, export channels, and these have mostly been created by or for the large-scale sector, and without these infrastructure and services, then there would be far less opportunities for the small-scale operators, and indeed some of them will cease to exist. So small-scale actors are generally less powerful and less wealthy than large-scale actors. The small-scale actors often have a disadvantaged socioeconomic background, and they have not finished school or had only a few years of schooling. Many of the small-scale fishers are of migrant backgrounds and have limited economic and political rights. Many of the small-scale traders are women. But in seeking to improve the situation of the small-scale actors, we can really only understand them within this entangled context in which large-scale is part of the same system. So we can't understand them alone. Next slide. This value chain example that mixes small-scale and large-scale activities is from Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands is a much smaller country than Indonesia, only around 1 million population, and its tuna system is much less complex. So here we've had a go at putting a whole national tuna system into one bracket. And it's still pretty complex for a slide, and it's hard to grasp, but I do want to show you the complexity, and I'll walk you through the graphics so that you can understand it. At the end, the green shapes are the ecosystem, the blue shapes are the fishing nodes of the chain, the yellow shapes are processing and trading for export, the purple shapes are domestic processing and trading, and the dark orange shapes are consumption nodes of the chains. So Solomon Islands had small-scale tuna fishing before industrial fishing started 4 decades ago, and there's still some hand-line small-scale tuna fishing that's more or less independent of the large-scale operations. And then there's sort of Prasant and some whole-line domestic industrial fishing in Solomon that started in the early 1970s. The main company is National Fisheries Development, called NFD, which is on the slide. And there are also distant water fishing vessels that fish in Solomon Islands exclusive economic zone. And they come into the capital town, Community to tranship. Both NFD industrial vessels and the distant water fleet reject part of their catch, so stuff that's of the wrong species or maybe damaged and that they can't include in the transshipment, and sell it to local markets. Sell it or barter it. They often barter it. People come out on canoes with drinks or food, vegetables, fruit, vegetables, or snack food or tobacco, and barter it with the crew, or they may buy it for a low cost. And they may then sell that reject fish directly. It's called salt fish because it's kept in a brine shell. It's quite salty. They might sell it directly in the market as salt fish, or they might take it home and cook it. And quite a lot of it ends up in the local exchange trade as well. So it's an affordable source of protein for urban populations, and it's also a source of material for these small-scale processes and trades. There's a cannery in Solomon Islands, in Nora, in the Western Province, which exports to the EU. But also there are messy connections in here, also to domestic markets. Most of there's a large amount of canned products sold in domestic markets, and it's mostly the dark meat that doesn't go into the export cans that is sold locally. It's no less a quality, it's from the same loins, and it's no less nutritious. It just happens to be what the market prefers the light meat, so the dark meat goes to the local markets. And over the years, some others have come to prefer the dark meat. There's a strong flavor. So in sum, while the tuna value chain systems in Indonesia and Solomon Islands have many differences, one point of similarity is that the small-scale and large-scale activities are interlinked. To understand the social benefits and risks of either of the model, you need to understand both together. Next slide. So in summing up, I'd like to sort of reiterate why I think it's important to understand large-scale and small-scale tuna value chains together. One reason is to improve our understanding of tuna systems in general. For example, for the Western and Central Pacific Ocean, there is reasonable data on industrial fishing catches, but very little on the small-scale catches. This has been particularly a problem for Indonesia and the Philippines, where a really large proportion of their catch, even the stuff that ends up in canneries and industrial value chains, is actually from small-scale informal fisheries. And there's not good data on it. So it's been a problem for those two countries, which are really big, important tuna fishing countries, to properly engage with Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission regional fisheries management activities. So that's one reason. Just to understand the fisheries better as a whole, we need to understand both large and small scale together. Another reason is that, as we can see from the previous slides, it means that some of the small scale activities rely on large scale activities. So even to understand small scale fisheries well, we need to also understand the large scale activities. And then one final comment, start monitoring data. Good governance requires good information. Understanding large and small scale tuna value chains has really large data gaps, and beyond snapshot data, what we need is monitoring ongoing data so that we can see changes, we can see if there is benefiting and who's not, and if we make an intervention, we can see whether it's worked or not. At the moment, we really lack data on social and economic dimensions. We lack data on whole value chains, where we have data, it tends to be just a fishing mode, and we also lack data on the informal activities. And nearly all of the small scale value chain activities are informal. We don't really understand very well. The aggregate scale is done. So I think for the future of fisheries, that's where I would like to leave this point. We need to improve.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, can you hear me in the Zoom room?
Yes, I can hear you right now very clearly.
Right, so we're gonna change our setting here. Good, okay, let's try that. Who's your next speaker?
Suvaluck.
Ah, perfect. Suvaluck, come on here with your computer, please.
Yeah, so Suvaluck Satumanatpan is a lecturer in the Faculty of Environment and Resource Studies at Mahidol University in Thailand. Her award-winning Thai textbook on coastal management is being used for teaching in several Thai universities. She has contributed to several national policy papers for marine and coastal resources in Thailand as well. She is interested in fishery governance research, integrated coastal management, MPA effectiveness, and marine spatial planning. She also regularly contributes to national policy papers on coastal resources. So if you're ready, yeah, whenever you're ready, Suvaluck, we'll wait for you.
Good Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Suvaluck Satumanatpan. I'm from Mahidol University, as Andrew suggested. Our team containing me, Ratana, Supakan, and Gangwan as the members of the TBTI Thailand. I actually not a fishery person, but I in circle of a fishery person around my coastal system, and that's why it's bring me to the interactive governance. This model was, I said, it's come to Thailand in 2008 about the interactive governance for fisheries, and then I start to learn and apply it to the habitat that I really get used to it. That is the history of this story. And so then I'm asking myself, is it going to be very hard to achieve this SD, the sustainable development in the coastal area? I think the answer is yes, because the coastal zone is very biodiverse, very complex and dynamic, and also it's the interrelationship, and also with the multiple interaction between natural and environment and the human system. In addition, it still faces the rapid and unplanned development, population growth, and demographic change, all of which contribute to the degrade and loss of coastal habitats. And then it's usually called complex problems or wicked problems. According to that problems, so conceptually, the integrated coastal management has come to overcome that kind of problem that I mentioned. And the ICM concept, right now I'm going to say integrated coastal management as ICM. It's considered as the alternative to avoid the traditional sectoral. This concept emerged in 1980s, as you know already, by the GSAM and by Sisin and Net. So we use the ICM as the intersectoral, intergovernmental land and sea and side-based management, and even the long terms with the ICM practices around the world, the health of the coastal system is continue to be degraded, and the sustainability is still a lofty goal. So several weaknesses since I think more than 20 or 30 years practices, several challenges appear in a number of papers. Stephen Olson, Christie, and also others. Edler 2003, and more recently, I think this is another good one, also by Eager et al. Into 2021. So, and also my experience in Thailand is that not different. When we look to the eastern coast or in the southern Thai, as you may see in the slide, they're coming up with with the coastal governance issues such as inadequate integration, limited capacities, and law of local leadership, communication, information dissemination, stakeholder participation is not adequate, or people didn't understand the participation in a meaningful way, something like that. So why we are interested to seek for the how to overcome such as the ICM, several models were introduced in a work reviewed by Stefan Patelos and their colleague in 2021. Several models. I choose interactive governance as the analytical tools to see what would I do to correct what I did wrong. So I use it as an analytical approach and extend my work since 2010 by working in the interactive governance theory. So the keyword, the big concept keyword of this theory is, you can see in the green colors, it's about the interactions, it's about problems, it's about opportunities, it's about to the institution and to implementing them. So myself, I took 5 keywords to decide what I'm supposed to do. And we can find many places, and we asking the coastal governance will work or not, depend on 3 main things. First, its characteristic that's diverse, complex, dynamic. You will hear this very often. I like that because it's simple and it's helped me to, when we decide something, we need to find something that is comfort for myself. Second one, the governing system, whether it has capabilities to address the challenges within the system to be governed, and also the overall qualities of the interactions. Okay, so let's start our example now. So I'm asking myself in the 3 orders of governance for the meta orders in the sphere of value image principle. What principles are the foundation of the coastal governance system? Do governing actors recognize or ignore that kind of principles? What are the goal settings? For the second orders, it's about what institutional characteristics do the governance system have? Are the existing regulation or rules supporting the ICM? Do we have instruments to support the desired goals? And in the day-to-day or management operations, what are the day-to-day? What did they do? Do they have the pattern of interaction among stakeholders to support the ICM? So that is general broad thing. And then we found that in Thailand cases, mine is a little one. In Thailand cases, we found that, okay, you can see on the top of this is the principle is about sufficiency, it's about sustainable development. It's also about the 12 principles that were read through the national environmental plans, which is about something of the sustainable development, ecosystem approach, precautionary principle, polluter pay principle, public-private partnership, good governance, extend producer responsibilities, resource efficiency, human right integration, and environmental justice. So I read it, Brown, to share with you that this is what the principle that my country paid their attention. And then what happened? So I extract this and see we have so wonderful principle, right? And let's say, get back to the sustainable development. So I use the case of the sufficiency principle to see that the sufficiency principle actually it's originated 40 years ago by the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej and has been recognized as the guiding principle for sustainable the sufficiency principle, how it influenced. Now I took the case from Ratana and Dongwan that extract from the small scale fisheries in 4 provinces in Thailand, and the result insists that when small scale fisher people explicit in their agreement to abolish the use of illegal fishing gears and were active in their participation to promote not only to abolish, I said abolish the use of illegal fishing gears, and they were also active in participation to protect and restore coastal resources. So this action is related to what they think about the sufficient principle. So they enjoy conservation, participation, things like that. The second one, I would go to the blue economy, is another keyword of the sustainable development. This one, why I say this? Because this one is, I think it's widely discussed, incorporated in many countries, including my country. We follow this trend and promote the blue economy concept as it's been appear in several national strategies in my country. And the other one is about the SDG goal 14. It's not surprising us as well because it was set in the national policy. But my concern is about this. My concern is about it. We asking something whether principles are clearly articulated in the policy and planning document. It is less obvious for me what and whose value underlie them. And also it is unclear that what image drive the blue economy. So in discussion about the SDG goal 14 in Thailand, it's mostly driven by the central government and similar to other countries. So the blue economy initiatives are mostly influenced by large-scale ocean-based sectors, including aquaculture, land development, industrial park, tourism, and industrial fishery, but nothing mentioned about the small-scale fishery. Unfortunately, that is one concern that when we look to the meta orders. Okay, and also, so I think you are still with me now, because I try to illustrate why the meta order is so important based on my case. So next we are going to see the second role about the second orders governance. So I give you 3 bullets. 1, what are the pictures of the governing institution in Thailand? It's coming like this. Okay, it's look, well, anyway, it's complex. I don't say it's good or bad, but it is very complex. For the upper part, it's about the national scale, at least 1, 2, 3, about 5 or 6 ministries interrelated when we fix the coastal problems. So it seems that we have clear and complex governing institution. That is one point, right? We have said that the legislation say that. For the second point, we see this one. Okay, you get the first bullet. The second bullet, the institution in terms of instrument. Okay, the world accepted is about MPA and the MSP. What is work in my country? Yes, okay, MPA, we use it for more than, I think, 40 years. Right now, we're setting up 10% to achieve the MPA figures. We right now have about 5%, and we aim to get 10%. So what happened? Coordination among the governing institution is problem. Okay, one thing. The second one, here, you see this. All of this is about the area of the MPA around that is convened by several institutions. So if you want to make MPA good, one is about strong and good coordination among government agencies. We can't avoid that. Second one, when you establish the MPA, you have to think about how you manage it effectively. That is 0. Right now it is 0. We don't know the data about that yet. So, we got the instrument. Does it work well? Okay. The third one is about the MSP. Another popular institution again. MSP are also popular in my country. I'm asking myself, do we really understand to use the MSP? The answer is questions. I can't say much about it because it's getting started. So you see that from the third order to the second order. Now we come to the first order. Okay, the first order going to be the last slide about what I found. So I took a few cases as they already has the second order very clear institution in terms of the committees to govern the coastal resources in 2 provinces. One in here, And another one in here, what I found, they cannot work in terms of day-to-day operation very well because they don't understand the interaction about the natural and the social system, one thing. Second one, they don't understand the regulation they are being used. So they can't be a good decision maker because they don't understand. That is one point. The other one is they won't have routine process of work. When you have a committee, you never call for a committee meetings. What happened? Nothing to be done. So they don't do that. So that is another reason. And also the one good point is the committees are setting up from intersectoral agency, right? So it's contain a numbers of people from different agency, but we do not have a good integration and coordination among the committee members. So the problem is you have clear 3-2-1 orders and practicing the interactive governance to the coastal system to better sustainabilities. I think we need some kind of 4 things for the time being. First, we have to expand from the ICM to interactive. Second one, we need to enhance from integration. Integration is something very fancy word in my country, but it's not really interactions. Okay. The third one, how can I make people understand management to governance? Simple one, but hard to practice. And the fourth one, I think that when we have a close looking the details for governability problems, the opportunities and the problems lied in a very simple 3 orders of governance that is going to help us to work systematically. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Suvaluck. We will now transition to our next speaker, who is joining us by Zoom. We will go with Rick first, and then we'll have you, Rayhan. So let me introduce Rick. And Rick Gregory, he has a career focusing on small-scale fisheries, which has spent more than 30 years. And he's been looking in particular to small-scale fisheries in Asia and Africa. In 2008, Rick had the opportunity to work in Myanmar on the post-cyclone Nargis recovery of coastal fisheries communities in the Irrawaddy Delta. This was followed by more than a decade of focusing on fisheries governance reforms in Myanmar. Today, he will be presenting on these reforms on behalf of his Myanmar colleagues, who, due to current situation in the country, cannot join us and cannot be named. But we are very happy to have Rick speaking to us and joining us as a plenary speaker. So we'll hand over to you, Rick.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
At the start of this session, Andrew said that these were turbulent times, and globally and in many countries as well. And this is certainly the case of Myanmar in the past year. This session is called Adjusting the Fisheries Governance Lens, but actually what has happened in Myanmar is a lot more than an adjustment. It's actually a U-turn that is affecting how small-scale fishers are how their livelihoods are progressing. So I'm going to take you through this story over the last 10, 15 years about Myanmar's fisheries governance and how this has affected things. Now, let me just move that. So 4 years ago, we presented this paper at the Too Big to Ignore conference in Chiang Mai, It was looking back at 10 years of freshwater fisheries governance reform in Ayeyarwady region of Myanmar. This was a very upbeat presentation. It ended with the cautionary comment that over the next few years, the perceived success or otherwise of Ayeyarwady's community fisheries co-management experiment will determine the long-term fate of its small-scale fishers. And the fate of the small-scale fishers in Ayeyarwady has now, at least for the time being, been determined. And this presentation will explain why and how this has happened. Come down here. Before we started, many of you may not be familiar with Myanmar's fisheries history, if you like, but certainly the inland and coastal fisheries have for long been governed from a very centralized perspective. Prior to 2008, decades of conflict and political crises resulted in broad institutional failures and overexploitation of natural resources, not just in fisheries, but in forestry and other natural resource sectors. And poor governance of fisheries had resulted in gross social inequality, conflict, and depleted aquatic resources. Laws and policies had established mechanisms for controlling resource extraction from what they call these are the sort of open water and floodplain areas. And this favored elite groups and well-connected individuals. So they were able to control fish production from these areas very effectively. The Intaji, these are the operators, large-scale fishers and collectors dominated the sector. And their grip was tightened in 1991 when the freshwater fisheries law allowed new river and canal areas to be allocated for auction each year. So the fisheries were basically, it was a fishing lot system, and these were auctioned off through a rather maybe not a transparent process to the benefit of well-connected individuals. These individuals, having got the fishing rights to key parts of the fisheries, would then sublease them to others, driving up the price at each. Often there was a cascade of subleasing from one subleasee to the next, and each time the costs of fishing for the fisher were increasing. Tide credit from money lenders also was a great burden on fishing communities. And so over time, the small-scale fishers steadily lost access to fishing grounds and markets, deepening their poverty. Now, the story of Myanmar is fisheries in Myanmar can be looked at as a sector shaped by two disasters. The first disaster, a natural disaster, occurred in May 2008 when Cyclone Nargis swept across the Ayeyarwady Delta. It killed an estimated 240,000 people and destroyed countless livelihoods, people's assets. And it was well documented in international news, but perhaps what was less well documented was the recovery that followed. And it was quite a successful disaster in many ways. It was well coordinated. The UN was involved. ASEAN, I think, for the first time responded to a major disaster. NGOs, private sector, civil society, private individual donations, temples, everything contributed to this, everybody contributed to this recovery. And it allowed for the opening up of some civil society space. So people were more mobile, more engaged with each other through the focus of this disaster recovery. It also coincided with the beginning of a thaw in Myanmar's relationships with Western democracies and the gradual opening up of the country. Thaw, for those Asian speakers who don't know snow and ice, is when ice melts. So this is the icy relationship that Myanmar had with many countries began to thaw around this time. Okay, now where do we go next? Okay, here. Now, in 2015, the Myanmar people elected the National League of Democracy government. It was a huge victory for democracy. And so this opening of the country, everything looked very positive. And on in the fisheries side, by 2020, through the collective efforts of government, NGOs, CSOs, fisheries governance in many areas had improved the situation of small-scale fishers significantly. So through this increasing openness, governance of the fisheries began to improve from the small-scale fishers' perspective. This included the broad recognition of the importance of small-scale fishers and associations, policy changes enabling community fisheries co-management. This took the form of regional and state fishery laws. Myanmar is unusual in this respect, that the states and regions which make up the country are allowed to legislate their own fisheries laws. The next benefit was improved tenure rights for small-scale fishing communities in many areas, and increased small-scale fisher participation in resource co-management and conservative. So these were really positive changes. And I say at the time, Myanmar was transitioning towards democracy and an open society. And this was seen as the direction. So we saw the rise of community fisheries organizations. By 2020, 4 coastal states and regions had fisheries laws that supported the establishment of community fisheries organizations. Small-scale fisheries networks and partnerships had strengthened at subnational and national levels, and many organizations were promoting these partnerships and networks. And small-scale fisher access to fishing grounds had increased significantly in some states and regions. For example, in Ayeyarwady, some 800 fishing lots were made available at the auction floor price to community fisheries organizations. Now, this is quite an interesting model. I'll just spend a minute on this because all too often, I think we see fisheries co-management attempted in open access areas. And in Myanmar, I think they made the sensible decision to keep these fishing ground areas as exclusive areas to the operator, but provide them to communities if they could cover the auction floor price. And I think this was quite an innovative change, innovative way of promoting co-management, because it gave the communities exclusive rights to their fishery. The impacts of the fisheries reforms were significant on small-scale fishers. A PEA study in Ayeyarwady 2018 showed that many small-scale fishers were benefiting from the fisheries reforms. These benefits included reduced conflict between resource users, reduced indebtedness, higher market prices for their catches and better incomes, and the sense of pride in participating in co-management of the natural resources around them. In many cases, the new fisheries legislation and policies had changed power relations in fisher communities significantly. This was not always for the better. We did a later study looking at how power relations had changed, and still the well-connected people were able to work the new legislation and policies in their favor, and in some cases, no improvement was seen. But in many cases, there was great success. The next fisheries reform that was being targeted was the tiger mouth fishery. This is an offshore fishery where 20 to 40,000 fishers, laborers work on rafts in very exposed conditions. It's extremely dangerous work. It's a lawless situation. Their labor conditions, working conditions are appalling. This has been studied by my colleagues. And by 2020, there was growing support for new legislation and policies to protect the labor rights and working conditions in the Kiapong, the tiger mouth fishery in the Gulf of Mortimer. So that was the direction that was moving. And then we had a second disaster. You probably read in the news or saw it on CNN, etc., that the military coup d'etat of February 1st, 2021, which happened at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, overthrew the democratically elected NLD government. This had huge impacts across Myanmar society, including the direction and momentum of fisheries governance reforms in Myanmar. The best example we have of this was in September of last year, when the de facto authorities in Ayeyarwady removed the chapter of the regional law that supported community fisheries establishment, announced the abolition of community-based fisheries, sold the access rights to the designated fishing grounds through an auction process. And this marked a return to the old system of fishing ground tenure rights being auctioned to influential persons, and small-scale fishers returning to a life of where they are regarded as a source of cheap labor and materials. So this was a huge shock to the fisheries sector, but across Myanmar, all sectors were affected as a result of this overnight change. The impacts on small-scale fishers were significant. Now, this is complicated a bit because at the same time as this political crisis began, the COVID-19 pandemic was also limiting people's mobility and interaction. But what we found, studies last year, are that small-scale fishers in many states and regions were experiencing reduced market prices, higher logistical costs, fewer creditors and advance payments were available to them. There was increased unemployment, reduced incomes, security in their communities had declined, with cases of theft and robbery becoming more common. People having to force changes to their livelihoods, more worryingly, increased school dropout rates and the increased use of child labor in fisheries. We have evidence that the tiger mouth fishery labor exploitation was worse than ever. And for many small-scale fishing families, the only option was migration. They had to move to either come to Thailand or to move to other parts of Myanmar where they could perhaps start a new livelihood. The impacts on community fisher associations and organizations is also huge. The viability of many small-scale fishing organizations is now under threat. Without tenure rights and a resource co-management mechanism, a legal basis, small-scale fisher organizations can no longer expect the full support of their communities. Political polarization and assembly restrictions are limiting opportunities for small-scale fisher organizations to engage with their constituents. And what we've seen in Ayeyarwady, again, is around 20% of the fishing lots are now leased to the fishing group leader rather than the organization. So there's room now for it to slip right back to the old system very quickly. Some organizations are divided along political lines, which threatens the security and safety of some group members. The international response to this has been to postpone or delay further support to Myanmar by many international donors. And at this stage, most fisheries development projects supported by international donors have been suspended. So a few opportunities exist. We've got to end on some sort of positive note, I think, with this. In some cases, small-scale fisher organizations are engaging with the de facto authorities through their regional development affairs committees in order to maintain their organizations and livelihoods. These are likely to be politically quite well connected so that they can continue, but this is a minority. Rakhine State, Mon and Bago regions still retain fisheries laws on their books that support community fisheries co-management. So they haven't abolished the mechanism yet. We have to see how they implement that. Natural resource co-management based on traditional values and local needs is happening in areas controlled by resistance groups, and large parts of Myanmar are controlled by groups that don't support the government, and they have set up their own natural resources management approaches. And the continued documentation of Myanmar's fisheries governance experiment is going on. And here I must thank TBTI for this opportunity to explain what's happening in Myanmar, because I think it's very important that the documentation is comprehensive, so that when conditions improve, much can be learned from what happened previously. So no Hollywood style ending this time for our presentation. The hope and optimism that carried many Myanmar fisheries stakeholders to TBTI in Chiang Mai in 2018 to discuss the exciting fisheries reforms happening in their country have evaporated. Much of the decade of work supporting the establishment of small-scale fishery organizations in Myanmar has been undone. But you never know. Perhaps at TBTI 2026, we will again be able to report that small-scale fishery organizations are engaging freely in fisheries policy debate and the community co-management of the country's fisheries. Thank you for listening. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I also remember in 2018 in Chiang Mai, there was a large group of colleagues from Myanmar joining the gathering, and there was quite a bit of optimism and hope around, and what a change of situation over a 4-year time. So yeah, thanks for the fascinating and confronting talk. We'll come back to you for more questions and discussions later. So we'll move to our next speaker, Rayhan Dudayev. As he's setting up, I will introduce him. So Rayhan Dudayev started his career in 2014 as an environmental lawyer to advocate for policy reform and environmental and human rights protection. He joined Yayasan Pesisir Lestari, I think the short form is YPL, in September 2019 as a policy advocacy and governance specialist. So far, his work, together with the organization's partners, such as Blue Ventures, has resulted in 7 coastal communities obtaining legal recognition and financial support from the government to manage their marine resources. So perhaps we'll be hearing more uplifting messages from his experiences. So we'll let Rayhan get started whenever you're ready.
I turn on. Can you hear me clearly, everyone? Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm waiting for the presentation sharing. First of all, thanks for the organizer for letting us speak on this event. Although I haven't chance yet to speak with Ratana and Inji since you are busy here with the setting arrangement. And yeah, we'd like to share our participatory fisheries governance work from Indonesia. And also we'd like to learn from all of you from participants, from other speakers on participatory fisheries governance from other countries.
Okay, is it up?
Okay. Yeah, as Andrew already introduced, my name is Rayhan. I am Policy Advocacy and Governance Specialist from Yayasan Pesisir Lestari, or Blue Ventures Indonesia. And my topic now is about enhancing participatory fisheries governance in Indonesia. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, first of all, I'd like to mention about the background of Indonesia, like marine governance in Indonesia. So As you might know, maybe Indonesia comprises almost 17,500 islands and has the longest coastline and largest coastal fisheries resources of any country on earth. 95% of Indonesia's seafood production comes from small-scale fisheries, which depend on the country's exceptional marine biodiversity. Yet, as the second largest producer of wild-captured fishes, Indonesian coral reef fisheries are most vulnerable to collapse. Many of the constraints and problems concerning these fisheries stem from issues with governance of marine and coastal resources at all administrative levels: national, provincial, district, and local. So, post-colonial societies have enacted new fisheries legislation which redefines the rights of the state to govern marine resource centrally. Although in the past, to resolve nearshore fisheries, their own ways of in Maluku Island in Indonesia applied since 100 years ago. Next slide, please. So, to address the governance problem and the marine environment like degradation, to address those like marine environment and governance problems, we try to address like 4 points. First one is to secure community marine tenure right. Secondly is we try to encourage community-based fisheries management. And the third one is Fishers Grant and Saving and Loan Scheme, as we found that one of the small-scale fishers problem is about like financial management. And the fourth one is like how community can get better incentive on when they can manage their marine resources and fisheries management. But our core value would be communities first. So this is where we work at the moment. Yayasan Pesisir Lestari, or you can call it YPL, the abbreviation, or Blue Ventures Indonesia, is marine conservation NGO that we believe that marine conservation is the best to be done by local communities in collaboration with other stakeholders. We try to replicate our model across Indonesia that we call Take Less, Get More. But what kind of model is that? We try to make marine conservation economically logic for the community by starting the work through valuable nearshore fisheries community management. In this case, we use nearshore fisheries community, for example, octopus or blue swimming crab, but mostly we work on octopus fisheries. And one of the management that we promote is called temporary closure. Temporary closure management is conducted for some period of time. Community doesn't fish in some area for some period of time. And then at some time as well, the area will be open. And at the moment, we don't work directly with the community, but we work with the amazing local community-based organization and also local NGO across Indonesia. Now we work with the 16 NGOs and 15 local NGOs at the moment. And we work now in 10 provinces in Indonesia and around 50 villages at the moment. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the community governance group from Wakatobi in Darawa village. So community has governance body called Limbo Kivolu, a group as part of the Adat community or customary community in Wakatobi, Southeast Sulawesi province. And in this working group, it comprises women and men. They have been conducted fisheries management like 7 times, temporary closure to manage fisheries commodity, like valuable commodity for them. But the question is, how can this community governance be established? So this will be through process that I will mention in the next slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, but first of all, before I mention how we establish in collaboration with the local community on community governance, community fisheries governance, why participatory fisheries governance? We believe that those closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. So as I mentioned before, like community-based or locally managed marine area has been conducted since long time ago in Indonesia, before we have our independence. But due to the political situation, it started to be eradicated at the moment. So first of all, why it's like historically it happens in Indonesia. And second one is we believe that it can reduce administrative costs for law enforcement, ecological knowledge, and governance. So that will be the approach that we use is like between scientific and also local traditional knowledge. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is to answer how. Kate before mentioned about one of the most important component of governance is data collection. So yeah, so first of all, I just want to like highlight like quickly in this slide, and then I will like elaborate like more detail in the next slides. So what we do usually with the community, with local NGO, and as well as local government is to have like fisheries profiling, and then we have participatory monitoring, data collection together with the community. And then we have data feedback session. What is data feedback session? I will mention later. And then fisheries management at the village level. And then we try to have evaluation of the management. And in doing this, we collaborate with the government as well as the community. Next slide, please. Yeah. First one, what we conduct together is fisheries profiling. So we identify together with local NGO and communities potency of fisheries resources, especially the valuable commodity, for example, octopus or blue swimming crab. And then also we try to look political situation at local level, who make decision making at local level, man, woman, village, head of village. And then also community economic situation. We try to connect what is the cause of environmental degradation. Is it debt, for example, or any social challenge faced by community? And also we assess together marine jurisdiction at local level. What is the context of the jurisdiction at the local level? And then we also conduct fisheries monitoring, as you see on the left side. So usually fishers, when they finish their fishing activities, they will just like sell the fish to the buyers. But now there is some slight change. We try to communicate to the fishers how important it is to collect the data. So yeah, fisher will land their important fish to the enumerator to be collected, the data. And the data that we collect together is like biological, which is like like small of size, and then the scale, for example, and also socioeconomic, the both participatory monitoring or data collection together with the community. We believe that the data that we collect together doesn't belong to NGO or researcher. So yeah, through this data feedback session, community can has local decision making process. So the governance at the local level can be conducted. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is the, as I mentioned, this is one of the management that we try to promote, and also communities are happy with this according to the data that we discussed with them, because as I mentioned, some of like season is not really good for fishing. They realize that, oh, this is still small. Why don't we wait and until the fish can spawn, for example. So yeah, what does it mean, temporary closure? It means that, as you see on the left, the basis of like local management is through data, first of all. And the second one is the community traditional knowledge, because community has already know like which season is good and which season is bad, for example. So it's a combination of that. Next slide. Yeah, so how do community make like a decision-making process? So first of all, fisheries governing body is established at the community level. And the second one is supporting the community with data and monitoring process. This is really important tool to empower the community, as well as basis advocacy at the government level. And also, not only the governing body, but also other marine resource users' opinion are important to be listened. So let's say like the management is conducted in one village, we need to also engage the village surround. The third one is using data collected as a basis for community to decide implementation of temporary closure. And the last one is after that, together with the community governing body in this photo, we conduct like management plan together, including surveillance, because it's important, like the compliance will determine like the result of management. And also outreach activities, it's important to communicate this management to other communities, as well as broader stakeholders, including higher level government. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the evaluation process. Two things that we measure on the evaluation process. First one is the catch per unit effort, and also the things that we evaluate in collaboration with the community. First one is catch per unit effort, and also production. Yeah, and the second one is the compliance. So we measure this after 30 days of the management. But what's the result? Sometimes we found a failure, sometimes we found success. And then that's why we need to have evaluation, so we can have adaptive management in the future. But as you might see, for example, like the management in Darawa village, so the CPUE, or catch per unit effort, like before management, it's like 17.44, and there is like an increase basically in this management. And as well as the production, as you can see in the slide on the left, is the production and income also increase. But it's not always success, but also we found a failure on this management. Next, please. So the result of a management and lesson learned together with the community. First one is saving tool. When we discussed with the community, they said that, yeah, we have saving tool now. Before that, we try to fish every day as much as we can, but now we just like, yeah, save some fish and then make it grow. And also why we choose octopus as a commodity, this species can grow really fast, like every month, like twice the size, actually. and also other nearshore fisheries. And also communities start to be eager to have like a broader management, wider area, as well as the other kind of like management. And also the third one is increased women's participation. For example, in Darawa village, women were jealous at the time, like why the closing area is like far from the shore, because we cannot reach that area. We also fish actually by gleaning, we walk, but we want to have our closing management as well. And then women also have their own temporary closure in Darawa village. And the fourth one is like, according to communities' testimony, that we just manage this octopus fisheries, but also the latent impact is our seagrass quality also improve, they say, because like they can also supervise other destructive fishing matter in their area. Social cohesion, this is also we found important, because between tribes, it's not really, there is like a horizontal conflict, but through this management, they work together to make this management is successful. And then also, it's important as well to get recognition from the government on community marine tenure rights. And also what we learned, it's amazing to work a local NGO. That's why we don't work directly with the community, but with through local NGO. Next. Next, please. Yeah. So this is about the end of my last presentation. So this is the opportunities for us as a basis for us for doing policy advocacy work on promoting participatory fisheries governance in Indonesia. So yeah, we try to maximize these legal opportunities together with our local partners and community. How we can maximize these opportunities by encouraging decision-making process on fisheries at grassroots level, starting at the village level, then it can be replicated at the different village. So it becomes it started small and then it becomes like a bigger and bigger. This aims to sustain fisheries resources and small-scale fisheries livelihood. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is like the recommendation, especially for the decision maker. Fisheries species management policy providing opportunities for participatory approach application. I don't know, maybe Kate already seen the tuna fisheries management policy in Indonesia. Maybe as you can see, it's still like command control and centralistic. The government who regulate, the government who monitor the data, etc. So we try to promote through octopus fisheries policy that also provide participatory fisheries policy, participatory fisheries policy. Yeah, so yeah, our next step is like we will try to build capacity for adaptive management. We try to promote broader management, not only a species, but also broader species, as well as a broader area. And also we try to also intervene value chain and markets. And then the last one is improve governance institution at local level and multi-stakeholders. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you, Rayhan. Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience in Indonesia, which give us some details of a working model of community-based management over there. So it's great to see. Unfortunately, our final plenary speaker is not with us, Prasant Mohanty. So we'll try to catch up with him another time. But then we can now move on to questions and answers and some discussions. Once again, thank you for the plenary speakers and also the attendees, which are there's more than 50 people joining us right now. So yeah, I'll open the floor to everyone who may have questions. Just I don't know if you can raise your hand, but yeah, you can type in your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box. I'm not sure what the setup will be, but will the speakers in the room, will they speak to us through their individual laptops? In which case, yes, I can see a hand now. But I don't know how it will work. But can Kate and Suvaluck open their cameras? And Rick too, please. Hi, Rick. Okay, so I see. Yes, I'll allow you to talk, Professor Inda.
Yeah, thank you very much for the time. So a good presentation. I just like to know regarding with the coverage of the research in Indonesia, which is just presented by Rayhan. Because I noticed that you might, Rayhan, you visited for a certain place of Indonesia, but if you can explain the location and also the situation, perhaps I will have a better feature of the study area. But I think that your research is good because you collect the data as well as talk with the people, and also you done several kind of thing regarding with the social community as well. So by the way, I just eager to know whether the situation of the community in your research study, how is the level of vulnerability regarding with the social, economic, as well as the natural condition of fisheries. And then perhaps using your approach, and then you can have a target for the level of viability. So because we have research regarding with the V2V, so I like to know regarding with the how is the vulnerability level in a study area, and then after you give a treatment, and then how is the situation become more viable.
Thank you, Inda.
Thank you very much.
Rayhan, would you like to provide a brief response?
Yeah, I'll try to. Yeah, first one is I think the organizer will share the presentation, right? And then Prof. Indah, you will see where we work. We work in 11 provinces. And yeah, you can see the detail later there. And also on the vulnerability, it depends actually, Bu, as you might know, from west, central, and east of Indonesia. In east of Indonesia, for example, in terms of marine environment, the condition is still good because like the development is not really massive. It's different with the west of Indonesia, while there is like harbor development, for example, and sand mining, for example. So it's quite different. And also in all the community that we find, they are more they find the similar problem actually, like debt. They really depend on the buyer. So yeah, that's why one of like the program that we'd like to we integrate at the moment with the fisheries management is like social inclusion program. So how in the near future the community cannot will not really depend on the lender. I think that's my quick answer.
Great, thank you, Rayhan. There's several questions coming in, but I will prioritize a question to other speakers first. So I will unmute you, Jarina, and you can ask your question to Rick.
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have a question from Rick. I'm really glad to have had this opportunity to listen to your presentation because we rarely get news from Myanmar, and so it's really great. So I just wanted to know if you could enlighten us a bit on the situation with the minorities in view of this new approach by the government, especially the Moken people in the Mergui archipelago. Do you have any information on these people? Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question, Jarina. Let me. I'm actually in contact with my Myanmar colleagues, so if you can give me a moment, I'll ask them your question, and I can pass on their answer to you. Andrew, could we move on while I just chat to my colleagues? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will come back to you. Just raise your hand or wave at me. We have questions for, we have a question for Suvaluck from Alina. I will read it out to you. Thank you, Suvaluck, for the interesting overview of the governance structure in Thailand. I was wondering, in Thailand, on the local level, what is the role of the fisheries committees? Are they similar to Japan's fisheries cooperative associations, for example?
Hi, everyone. So when you're talking about the local scale as the fisheries, so I think it's similar. It's similar, yes. For the small scale fishery in Thailand, they also have some kind of association and local small scale fishery organizations setting up according to the law. So I don't think they can hear you. You can hear, huh? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear Suvaluck, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so my answer is yes. And the reason I already explained previously. So if you link, I do like the way that our presenter talking about you cannot separate exactly between the large scale and the small scale fisheries. In my case too, I don't think we cannot separate the fisheries and the coastal system. It's interlinked. But in my case, because these two communities are convened by two departments, one for the coastal communities, another one for the small scale fisheries. And in these two systems, even they're setting up similar organizations in which by engage their local involvement in more participation in terms of setting up rule or other stuff to better manage in the local area, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Suvaluck. Rick, would you like to come back to us, or you need a little bit more time?
No, I can. I've been chatting to one of my colleagues who actually did a study of the Moken people a few months ago. These are people that are coastal communities that sort of move in between Thailand and Myanmar. They have been traditionally. That's been their lifestyle. I think the first point my colleague makes is everyone in Myanmar is suffering, but it does not seem that the Moken people are suffering disproportionately. So it's there are cases of the Navy stopping them, taking off their food, taking off their fish catches, these sorts of things. But it's such a bad situation for the people generally. I don't think, it doesn't seem that the Mogan people are being targeted especially. I'll stop there, I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have a question for Kate? I have one. Actually, I have two questions. I think you can hear me, or I can wait for you to get set up. All right. So just a question about the relationship between the small-scale fisheries operators and the large-scale fisheries operators. When they overlap in certain value chain points, accessing same infrastructure and services, or when the industrial fisheries operators are getting catch from the small scale fisheries, is that relationship generally symbiotic, agreeable, or can that be more of a sort of conflict point? That's one question. And then the second question is, moving forward, I guess in sort of better integrating small-scale fisheries and industrial fisheries in the management of overall fisheries. I guess one advantage of separating them is to make management easier, right? You have to compartmentalize certain things, but by integrating them, I guess manageability or governability of that value chain could suffer a little bit. I'm wondering if you could comment on that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. In terms of conflict between the small scale and the large scale actors, there's huge variability. So I'm thinking of some examples from Indonesia, and sometimes there was a lot of symbiosis, but also sometimes when there is conflict, it is usually the small scale actor who loses out, or when there's a difficult situation. So for example, things were difficult after 2014 when there was a moratorium on foreign investment, and a lot of the Philippines investment in the betung industry had to pull out suddenly, and so the amount of catch available went down, and the canneries and the buyers were scrambling for catch, and then the suppliers tended to go with their large scale buyers rather than their small scale. So some of the small scale traders found it really difficult to get catch at that time. So I think it can vary, but it was the small scale players who are more vulnerable to problems when there is a conflict. In terms of better integrating and the question about governability and it being manageable, I'm sure that would become a problem. So I know, say, in the Pacific, usually there's an offshore fisheries management section in the Fisheries Management Agency, and then there's a coastal fisheries management section, and they don't really talk to each other very much. And so that's one of the problems, and one of the reasons why I was motivated to write this paper. I think data is one of the main problems, and if there is better data on the informal and the small scale value chains, that could possibly help. At least people can get a handle on what's going on in the small scale sector. But yeah, I guess you'd have to try it and see. There would be governability problems of it becoming unmanageable because it's so complex. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, we're at 4:30, but I just see a question for Kate from Raymond, a question from Simon to Rayhan in Q&A. I think Ryan can answer that by writing. And then there was another comment or question for Rick from Mina. But I think, unfortunately, we'll have to bring our session to a close. Right, Ratana? So I think Rick has provided an answer to Mina. Thank you for that, Rick. And Raymond has written Raymond's quick question to should small-scale fisheries be consumption? I think we will bring the session to a close. Kate is Raymond's PhD supervisor, so Raymond, I would kindly ask you to speak to her after this session. But yeah, a lot of great comments are coming in. So let me just wrap up. So I think from this only 2-hour session, I think the presentations really effectively highlighted the various challenges that small-scale fishers are facing. On top of typical governance issues, we have value chain complication, we have political crisis, health precautions, and even somewhat humanitarian crisis as well. So certainly there is a clear need to carefully calibrate governance for small-scale fisheries. We need to adjust the governance lens, but in some cases we know that we are realizing that we need to do more than adjusting. We need to actually rethink and remake and taking another U-turn. I think political issues have been highlighted, but also policy issues have been highlighted in the case of Kate's presentation, and Suvaluck's. So we need a favorable and supportive political environment, but that is not enough. We also need innovations in governance, as we've seen in Indonesia case and also in the Myanmar's case prior to the political coup. So I will end with that. Apologize for the sound issues at the beginning. On behalf of everyone, I would like to thank all our plenary speakers for sharing their time and their expertise and their experience, and also the audience for an engaging discussion. It's a shame that we can carry on a bit longer, but we'll end now, and please check back for parallel sessions starting in just about 30 minutes. Thank you, everyone.